Titans, go!
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. I'm Charles Skaggs, back in Doom Manor once again as we discuss Doom Patrol, the Titans spin-off series. And I'm here, of course, with my favorite Titan Talker, everybody's favorite Titan Talker, ready to talk some Doom Patrol, Jesse Jackson.
Hello, Charles. Happy Sunday morning.
Good morning. You too.
It is, to pull back the curtain a little bit, it is the Sunday after daylight saving time changed. I can never remember, are we going to? Are we leaving? It doesn't matter. We moved an hour this morning.
We're getting back to real time.
Ah, okay.
Because all that other stuff was fake time that screws you up because it's an hour ahead of where it should be.
Exactly.
So now when you are at home watching TV at 10 o'clock at night, it's 11 o'clock at night, so you feel like, hey, I can stay up later.
Exactly.
So that's good.
So I am ready to talk another chapter in Doom Patrol.
Yes, this is what I like to refer to as the advanced class of Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol.
Ah, very nice. So
which we'll talk about here shortly, because we're going to talk about Cult Patrol here at episode 24 of Titan Talk, which was the fourth episode of Doom Patrol Season 1 that just came out a couple days ago on March 8th, 2019.
Nice.
So, yeah, this was written by Marcus Dalzine and Chris Dingus. I'm sure he gets a lot of crap about that name. And directed by Stefan Plazinski. So, very, very interesting episode, especially if you're a Grant Morrison Doom Patrol fan like I am. Now, Jesse is not, so I'm sure he's going to have a completely different perspective than yours truly, which is okay. But hopefully there are some good character moments that he enjoyed, and some interesting analyses of some of our characters as we kind of explore their characters further. So looking forward to talk about it with you, Jesse.
Okay, yes, I am excited to talk about it too.
All right. So our guest cast for this episode features, of course, we should read right off the bat, we got to talk about Mark Sheppard as Willoughby Kipling, and the magician and chaos magician, I should say. And of course, Jesse and I know him because of our Doctor Who podcast, Next Stop Everywhere, free plug, that as Canton Everett Delaware the Third in the Matt Smith era storyline, The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon, that two-parter. And, of course, he also played Crowley on Supernatural, which I'm sure a lot of people recognize him from.
Badger from Firefly.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that was on my list. Romo Lampkin, the lawyer on Battlestar Galactica, the remake of Battlestar Galactica.
That was a great role.
Yeah, he was very good in that role. And Bob the Caretaker, that's where I was first introduced to this actor, which was in the first season episode of The X-Files called Fire.
Wow.
Where he's a pyrokinetic, and he was really good in that one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of interesting that, like, way back in the 90s, like, I noticed this guy because I thought he was really cool in one of my favorite X-Files episodes from back in the day. And here we are, like, 30 years later almost, and talking about him on Doom Patrol. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I made this joke last episode, and I think it's worth repeating. Maureen Bryan, the great TV critic, said that Congress had passed the quote, Mark Sheppard Full Employment Act is the reason why he is on so many shows. It is not just genre, but I mean, TNT shows, major shows. I mean, his IMDb page is incredibly diverse, very active in conventions, and I teased this last time. So I was at Dragon Con several years ago, and one of the exciting parts of Dragon Con is the ability to catch a celebrity in the wild. And so I was at one of the hotel's lobbies, or I guess kind of the general area, and I heard a lady dressed in a damn it, I'm going to get this wrong, a Stargate uniform. Okay, and all of a sudden I hear someone talk. She's like, well, I don't really know about Doctor Who. And I hear a guy going, oh, you've got to check out Doctor Who. It's amazing. He says, and you don't have to even go back to the old stuff. You don't even have to start with, with the reboot. You can start with the 11th Hour. And I look, and it's Mark Sheppard.
Right. That's cool.
Telling this lady, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's amazing. And he looks over me and goes, yeah, right? And she's like, you can just start with Matt Smith. It's amazing. This is truly one of the best shows. If you like, Stargate, you're going to love this. And I said, yeah, and, Mark was in it. And he goes, yeah. I said, yeah, and you got to say both iconic lines. And he goes, yes, I did. And so she goes, okay, I'm going to try. He goes, okay, great. And then someone was pulling him. He goes, okay, I've got to go. It was fun talking to you guys. And he walked off.
Well, that's cool. That's a nice little anecdote.
That was a nice moment for a convention. It was.
That's cool.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of nice where you get those little aside moments from the actual panels.
And you can just see how much
you get
he was.
Yeah, you get a better idea of how that celebrity is when they're acting on the floor with people, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
As opposed to in front of a crowd.
Right.
Well, that's great. Well, I'm glad to know he was a really good guy in person. So
yes.
That's good. That's good to know. We also had Lili Birdsell in this episode as Martha, the rather disturbed mother of Elliot in this episode, and she also plays Mother Archon, the dual role. She was recently notable because she played a character named Lucy Bauer, one of the scientists in the Darkhold project on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. recently.
Okay.
So that may be where you've seen her before. And she's also been on episodes of Castle, which is a show I know you're familiar with.
Absolutely.
And also Angel back in the day. She was in an episode of Angel. So she's been around a while. We had Ted Sutherland, who plays her son Elliot, the unwritten book, shall we say. And he was recently on a TV series called Rise, if you're familiar with that show. It wasn't on – I don't think it was on very long.
No, and I tried it because I was a big fan of Smash, the show about Broadway and Marilyn Monroe. I tried this one, and I just did not care for it very much.
Well, probably a lot of people didn't care for it, which is probably why it's not around anymore.
Yes.
We also had Michael, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Seal-Abba, or Seal-Abba, as Martha's husband Todd, the one she kills, slices right in front of her son Elliot.
Yes.
And also the rather inert Father Archon later in the episode. And then we had a voice actress named Chantal Berry who played the voice of Baphomet, the horse head oracle that features later in the episode that we'll talk about. But some pretty interesting actors in this one, I thought.
Yes.
But obviously, Mark Sheppard's the big star of this episode. And I was really glad to see him cast as Willoughby Kipling. So very happy with that casting.
Good.
All right. So ready to talk some topics?
I am. So I am going to guess in advance.
I'm sure you have an idea.
Clash song titles?
Incorrect.
Dang it!
I'm guessing you thought Clash song titles because of Cliff's T-shirt.
Yes. By the way, that is a highlight every week of me seeing which, and I so want a Springsteen shirt. I want a Springsteen shirt. I want a Springsteen shirt. I
Yeah.
realize he tends to be more hard rocking,
Right.
and more of the
Yeah.
punk, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's more of a kind of a punk and also just
British
kind of a
rock and stuff. Yeah,
hardcore. Yeah.
yeah. But hope springs eternal.
Right.
That he could have a classic Born in the USA. With Bruce doing that iconic look. That would be
Bruce
very
is
cool.
a little bit mellow compared to apparently Cliff's musical taste.
I think so.
Especially if he's sporting Black Flag T-shirts, which he did at one point.
Yeah,
But
certainly the Grammys opened once with Bruce singing lead on London Calling.
oh,
as
really?
A tribute, yes.
That's
So,
interesting. I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
But of course you would because
Yes.
you're a Springsteen guy, so that's cool.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's interesting. I might have to
you
check
have to look
that out.
that out. Yeah, it was a tribute to
Joe Strummer, or
whoever. Someone had died,
yeah.
and so they opened the Grammys with them covering London Calling.
Okay,
So,
that's
yeah.
cool. So, no, I went a different direction with our themes this week, and I'm going to do 4 topics this week.
Okay.
Because the way this kind of story was a little structured, there's a lot of characters I want to talk about. So I broke this down into 4 segments, but we can do shorter segments
Okay, sounds good.
to kind of average things out. So first topic. I'm fixing a hole where the rain gets in and stops my mind from wandering. So
Okay.
I'm going to leave that there. If you're a fan of a certain group, you probably picked up on that horrible singing of mine. And I want to talk about, this is Cliff and Jane I want to talk about. So fixing a hole, because Cliff and Jane try to go fix up the Stigmata Gateway on Father Cuervo in Nurnheim, and try to prevent Nurnheim from passing through into our dimension. So I want to talk about Cliff and Jane. Cliff and Jane are not doing very well. They start off very frictionless, following up on the events of last episode. And Jane has apparently taken a time out as a result, leaving other personalities to fill the void. So I want to talk about them. And also at the end of the episode, where we get some insight on to how each of them views the other.
Yes.
So, Jesse, what did you think about Cliff and Jane in this episode?
So I like their relationship, and it's very clear that this is, I was worried it would be a romantic, and it's not at all. It is definitely, in his mind, father-daughter, that's very clear.
Right.
And her, I think, depending on the persona, she's someone she likes. But I think Jane, which we know is not the core persona, but for the sake of this argument, let's call it is, seems to be having a connection with him.
Right.
I like the idea that because she was vulnerable with him, at least that's how I interpreted that, she was a little maybe embarrassed or
Right.
a little bit worried, or maybe the other personalities like, look, you shouldn't be doing that. But regardless, she took a time out, so we got a lot of Hammerhead, right?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Which was very cool. I like that character. I did find the penny farthing, or
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, Penny Farthing.
I kept thinking of Penny Dreadful, but
no, it's Penny Farthing, which is named after a old style bicycle. That's the kind of bicycle where it has that big front tire,
yes,
and then a little small tire in the back.
Yeah. So a very Oliver Twist, Charles Dickens. Sorry,
yes.
sir.
Yeah.
And
well, she's Penny Farthing's kind of the apologetic Brit character.
And so I thought that was really fun, even though it was irritating from Cliff's perspective. Like, really, you have all these badass personalities, and I get stuck with the sniffling little, British, young boy,
apologist.
Girl, that's like, oh, so sorry, sir, oh, sorry, sir, and going to whoever is the strongest person in the room. So, yeah, I like their interactions a lot.
Cliff was kind of mad that he's like, well, I want to yell at Hammerhead, and you're telling me I can't even yell at Hammerhead? Come on.
Yeah. So, so this was a pretty. I did not feel confused about this at all.
Right.
I liked their persona. I thought it was pretty interesting. that they ended up going to the other area dimension.
Nirnheim, yeah.
Yeah. So I liked it. It was good.
All right, cool. Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting at the beginning where Cliff's having this dream
Yeah.
of his daughter. Like
Hmm.
it was a very disturbing, almost like a nightmare where he's, it comes off like a flashback where we see
Yeah.
Cliff. He's obviously younger. He's got hair. He's hairier at least.
Hmm.
He's got rocking a mustache and whatnot. And he goes to pick up his daughter, Clara, from her crib after she's crying. And he notices his reflection in a mirror by the crib, and he sees his robot man self in there. And so you think, okay, well, that would shock him out of it. But then we cut to Clara, who's now slightly older, a little girl, wanting to curl up with Cliff and take a nap with him, her father.
Yeah.
And that turns out to be it's almost like a dream within a dream.
Yes.
And then Cliff wakes up this time and he finds Jane there. But right off the bat, you kind of notice that, well, Jane's has her hair up in kind of pigtails like Baby Doll.
Right.
So at some point during the night, Jane came in as Baby Doll. And remember, Baby Doll was afraid of Cliff.
Yes.
So now all of a sudden, Baby Doll wanted to curl up with Cliff and felt safe around him,
Hmm.
which I thought was interesting.
Absolutely.
And then Cliff wakes up, and then wakes her up, and it's not Baby Doll after all, it's Hammerhead. And Hammerhead is all, like you said, I think she was embarrassed, but she's angry because she was in that kind of embarrassing position left by Baby Doll. And then from there, it kind of leads into Cliff wanting to know, like, okay, where's Jane? I want to talk to Jane. And Hammerhead says that Jane's in a timeout. And that leads us to Hammerhead revealing that Jane was apparently very traumatized by seeing Cliff rip those guys apart in Fuchtopia last week.
Yeah.
So apparently she needed to check out. Hammerhead kind of supplanted as the dominant personality.
And I suppose, Charles,
Yeah.
I'm just.
And Cliff is just clueless about the whole thing. He's just like,
Yeah.
Wait, what's the big deal? What did I do wrong? And she's like, you figure it out.
Yeah, and I guess maybe I'm too calloused of watching, superhero movies,
Right.
Zack Snyder or whatever. But I did not. I wasn't shocked by. I was a little actually confused last week with Cliff being so like, oh, I'm covered in blood, and what did I do?
Right.
I was kind of like, that's what you needed to do. I mean, maybe you were a little more violent than you needed to, but this is not a G-rated comic. Of course you're gonna kill them. So I was a little bit about that.
Well, I think Jane, and I'm just guessing here.
Yeah.
Because we don't know the full story yet. I think Jane was she thought she was starting to perceive Cliff as something else. And, like someone safe.
Yeah.
And then to see him so violent, she makes this comment later as Hammerhead saying that, like, hey, you're just another, what did she say, like a misogynist, or not misogynist, but another toxic masculinity, another example of toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
So, which I have an inclination from the comics about what that connects to, but I'm not going to talk about that yet. But it's obviously troubling her. And Cliff's cluelessness about the situation isn't helping at all. And it becomes even more interesting so that when we get to the end of the episode, when Mother Archon kind of peels back the layers
Mm-hmm.
of how Cliff and Jane view each other. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Because let's see, this is after they've kind of traveled and been captured in Nirnheim and brought
Right.
before Mother Archon, with Jane now in that penny farthing persona. So Cliff calls out Mother Archon for saying that she's denying reality, but then she's like, well, there is no reality. There's only perception. So then we see Cliff becoming human, and Jane starts seeing her various personalities in this kind of broken mirror shard reflection. So
Yeah.
like there's like a mirror that's been broken all over the floor, and in each shard we see one of her various personalities, including her younger self as Kay Chalice.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you think about that moment?
I think it was okay. I did not from just watching this, it was just another story to me. Like I said, this one was I don't want to say it just was kind of moving the story along,
Right.
but I didn't feel anything emotional about this. I was actually a little bored with the Cliff and Jane part.
Okay.
I wanted to go back to the Constantine. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Willoughby Kipling. Yes.
Yeah, Kipling role, because I thought that was a more interesting.
Well,
story.
we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about that in our third segment. So yeah.
Yes.
I want to give Willoughby Kipling his due here.
Absolutely.
All right, but yeah, I thought it was interesting because in addition to that, we kind of see then Mother Archon says, well, this is how we see each other, and then that's when we see Cliff becoming a blood-soaked robot man again.
Yeah.
And while Jane becomes his daughter Clara.
Right.
So Jane is viewing Cliff as this, violent monster, and Cliff views Jane as his daughter, which we all kind of figured at this point.
Yeah.
But it basically laid it out. It laid it out for Cliff, so that maybe Cliff wasn't even aware of it, and he's kind of was a little denial. He's like, no, that's not how I view her, but it is how he views her.
Yeah.
And then Mother Archon says, and then there's our truest form, and that's where we see Cliff being just nothing but a disembodied brain on the floor.
Yeah.
While Jane has now become young Kay Chalice.
Yeah. See,
the girl she was before her trauma that splintered her mind into all these personalities.
So I may have to go back and rewatch this because I just kind of glossed over that.
I just thought it was a very
speaking, Charles.
Yeah.
I was bored listening to you tell the story.
Oh, well, thank you.
No, what I mean is, and it's not you tell a very good story. I just don't understand the importance of this. I mean, it's like, okay, yeah. I mean, you can only do so much psychologically.
Yeah.
And let's tell a story. And I think it was kind of, yes.
Well, I thought it was an important moment because it kind of laid out for Cliff and Jane how each is viewing the other.
But I think we kind of knew that, and maybe they didn't know it.
That's what I'm saying. They didn't know that. So the importance of the scene was to kind of spell it out for them.
Okay.
So that now they can kind of approach each other a little differently.
All right. Well, we'll see where it takes it. But for now, I think it was a little too much for not enough delivery.
That's all right. All right. Anything else about Cliff and Jane before we move on?
No. Like I said, I love his Clash T-shirt. I like their relationship together, and so just after a while, they try too hard sometimes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, see, I personally thought it was psychologically interesting, but that's me. Yeah.
No.
I enjoy those little I enjoy those character insights.
Do you feel now? This is not the Grant Morrison, 407, advanced Grant Morrison twist, or is this part of that?
Well, that part there with Cliff and Jane was something created for the show.
Okay.
But the whole thing with Nurnheim, and I'll talk about that when we talk about in our fourth segment about the cult of the unwritten book and the Decreator.
Okay.
That's the advanced level Grant Morrison stuff I want to talk about really quickly.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to topic number 2, which is lovely Rita, meter maid, nothing can come between us.
Okay.
So I want to talk about Rita, of course, and there's a couple of song titles there. Fixing a Hole in Lovely Rita. So hopefully you've picked up on those.
We were heading
and
toward Abbey Road.
Yeah, as Jesse starts typing into his computer.
No.
All right, yeah. So this I want to talk about Rita, but in this segment I also want to talk about Vic, and I want to talk about Larry, because Rita has kind of moments with both of those characters, and so it's kind of a good excuse to kind of group all those three together. So let's talk about Rita first, where Rita is again being very reluctant about being a hero. And it's only kind of like she starts off like disinvited from the team meeting that Cyborg sets up.
Yeah. And
she's kind of annoyed with that. And Cyborg goes, well, hey, I didn't think you'd be interested.
Yeah.
So what did you think about Rita in this episode?
So I like Rita. I do think it is it's starting to be a little frustrating with me, and it just may have been the episode.
Yeah.
I watched it yesterday morning, but I'm a little irritated with Rita. There's the phrase "blank or get off the pot."
Right.
Make a decision. You are what you are. I mean, I thought Vic's little point of we all have a goal.
Right.
We're working together.
Right.
Team,
Yes.
Was a great line. But, she can't decide what she wants to be. And that is irritating me.
Well, I think this was the first step toward that.
Okay, good.
And we'll talk about it why here in a minute. Because Rita, there's a when they get a hold of Elliot, the unwritten book, and they're trying to protect him back at Doom Manor in the lab.
Yeah.
And you have Willoughby Kipling wanting to kill Elliot because Kipling views like, well, hey, if this kid is the reason that could bring about the end of the world, well, we'll just take out the kid and solve the problem. No kid, no end of the world.
Yeah.
But Rita steps in between them, and this is where we kind of first see her not just being a blob. We see her stretching her arm out in true Elastigirl form, or Elastowoman form now, and holding Kipling at bay.
Yeah.
And then later, we see Elliot, Larry lets him out of the lab, and he goes off to kill himself by jumping out a window. But he can't quite do it. He's sitting on the roof, and he's about to, or acts like he wants to. And Rita, instead of not getting involved, because remember, she doesn't get involved.
Right. And
she actually reaches out to him and talks him back into the house.
Yeah, and remember, this was a big moment for her because she was disturbed before.
Right.
She was eaten by the micro, gooey stuff in the river. She didn't even want to watch a guy that had a deformed arm.
Right.
So she wants everything perfect, which is part of the reason why she's so destroyed by her own issues. But to care, it's not like she's a mom. It isn't like she's shown a maternal instinct.
Right.
Though I think she has a
apparently it's
into that.
It's there now.
Because of taking care of the rest of the group. So
right.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice moment. I did love her
I thought that was an important character moment where she's starting
I
to make
agree
that
with
turn.
Too. And in the whole, you're only on the second floor, so this isn't.
Yeah, it's not a big
yeah.
deal, but but the fact that she got involved, and she reached out, she could have just like gone to her room or gone elsewhere, and left Elliot to his fate, but she cared, and I thought that was this is a first step, I think, for her, and hopefully this will mean this is gonna bring her around. And so now she's just got to work on the perception that everybody else is seeing about her as well. So we'll see where that goes. But I thought it was a kind of a turning point for Rita.
I agree. It was. I also liked.
We'll see where they go.
Yeah. I like the. We get a little more insight with Larry and the chief and the energy being. Watching the old VHS tapes.
Yeah, that's what.
Which Larry's like, "Ooh, wait a minute," Well,
at first he was very resistant about that.
Yes, he was, but then he happened to catch this because it's the energy being that's watching the tapes.
Yeah, the negative spirit. Yeah, and the negative spirit is essentially trying to show him something, a message. And he's trying to get Larry to figure it out. He keeps bringing him like his body in front of this TV and putting this video and hoping he'll watch it. And then he finally does and realizes something, which he, he realizes that, okay, we're watching this thing that the chief came up with this machine.
Yeah.
So that the negative spirit could express his voice. Like the negative spirit goes inside the machine, and apparently that, through whatever, super sciencey way, allows the negative spirit to communicate. And he does. He says that the only word, though, he says is torture. And this is in reference to how do you, the chief asking the negative spirit, how do you stay inside his body?
Yeah.
And he says torture. So apparently there's some reason why the negative spirit feels like it has to be there, even though it doesn't. It's painful for the negative spirit to be there.
Yeah, I thought that was I didn't quite understand that, but it made me interested. I thought that was a nice twist.
But and you notice that Larry was left, kind of pondering this. He was left like. Okay, I didn't expect that that's how the negative spirit felt. So maybe this kind of changes his outlook toward the spirit inside him. So what did you think about, do you think that was a kind of like an eye opener for Larry?
Yeah, I think so too. I think, he's had, so far he's had one of the most significant journeys.
Right.
As we're getting to know him. I thought that was really one. I was glad to finally hear the negative spirit actually have a voice and talk. I do know it. I'm going to go on a tangent, but bear with me, Charles.
Go ahead.
Often when fans are watching a TV series that has a romantic couple, will they or won't they?
Yes.
They're very, okay, they need to go ahead and get together. We need to get together. They need to get together. And instead of enjoying the journey, I found myself a little bit guilty of that, going, okay, I need Larry and the negative man to start talking. I need them to start talking.
Right.
And now I'm like, okay, you know what? Back off. Enjoy this journey, because they are trying to make this, they are a story they're trying to tell.
Right.
And so I really like this. That part of the episode really did move forward in a better way. I found more significant than I did the Cliff and Jane stuff, even though Cliff and Jane are two of my favorite characters.
Right. Well, Rita's character arc seems to be like, okay, how does she become a hero?
Yeah,
how does she become involved? Now, while Larry's is, how do I come to terms with what's inside of me?
Yeah.
That's the way I'm viewing it. That's his character arc.
And
I like the way this is progressing. We're getting little tidbits, and Larry's getting these little insights, and I really like that.
Yeah, I in a general term, not to get too global. But
Right.
they seem to be doing a good job, from my perspective, Charles, of there is a grand story. We're looking for the chief.
Yep.
We have little side pockets like this one trying to protect the book. But overall, they have done a nice mix of, looking for the chief is your story, but we're using this as to tell our characters' journeys and a lot of character moments
Right.
and character development. So looking for the chief is almost like the MacGuffin.
Right.
And this is, so I like that a lot.
And we are getting to see the chief because we're getting to see him through these videotapes.
Right.
And we get some kind of insight.
Yes.
Into, some background story that kind of helps propel the main story forward.
And by the way, you probably saw this.
Yes.
But the original, the promo shot of them all in the bus.
Right.
I just noticed this time, the chief, Timothy Dalton, is eating a candy bar.
Yes.
Which you had talked about last week.
Because he's a chocoholic.
Yes. He has this little sweet tooth. And I thought was like, oh, look, this is well done, Charles. Way to point that out. So, yes.
Well, I'm glad you appreciate that insight. Vic doesn't have as much to do with this episode, but apart from trying to coordinate the team. Yeah. Which is a chore in itself. He's like herding cats, basically.
Well, and I do love the interaction between Kip and Vic is because science, magic.
The contrast, yes. Yeah. Now, and that was kind of interesting because they're both kind of locked in their positions. Like Vic is science guy, and Willoughby Kipling is obviously magic guy. So there's this great moment when the two of them are having to fend off the Dry Bachelors. And one of the agent groups of the cult of the Unwritten Book, and Vic pulls out his sonic cannon, so we got to see his sonic cannon for the first time, which I thought was really cool. Yes. And Kipling starts pulling out a flaming sword out of his back, and so they start going through the Dry Bachelors. They start slashing them up. And turning them into the letters that were never sent, and Vic and Kipling have this kind of appreciation. There's this great moment where Vic goes nice magic and Kipling goes nice science as they're carving through these guys. Well, and I thought it was a good bonding moment until, of course, Vic gets thrown to the wolves so that Kipling can go off and try to kill the Unwritten Book again.
And one of the things I really I thought of is Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad's great, science. I really liked the interaction between them. And who doesn't love a flaming sword? Exactly. But also the sonic cannon. I mean, it was really, really.
It was a good action sequence.
Yeah, it was a very good action sequence.
Yeah, I thought that was good. All right, anything else about Rita, Larry, or Vic before we move on?
Nope.
Okay, third topic. The magical mystery tour is coming to take you away. Coming to take you away.
So,
take you today.
Did you come up with these topics yesterday?
All my troubles seem so far away then.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Thank you for the head. You had mentioned this last episode.
Yes.
That and I didn't remember it all, but Willoughby.
Yes.
I'm watching this and I'm going, he seems real familiar.
Yes.
And so I said, didn't Charles say something about this? But you said it very.
I was going to cover that.
I knew you were going to, but I just wanted to share, and I'm setting you up to tell the story.
Yes. Yeah, I did kind of address this a little bit last week,
but just enough not to, kind of a
tease.
Tease, exactly.
Yes.
So
I'm a writer. I like to tease.
Yes,
things,
you are.
So it's all about the drama.
I did a quick Google search, and I went, oh yeah. So for those of us who didn't want to go to Mr. Google,
Yes.
um, if I said, wow, this seems like a very John Constantine type character,
There's a
you
reason
would
for that.
say yes.
There's a reason for that. So yeah, obviously we're going to talk about Willoughby Kipling in this segment. Played, of course, by Mark Sheppard, rather well, in my opinion, because I was a fan of the character in the comics. Now, give some backstory, like Jesse was talking about. Willoughby Kipling first appeared in Doom Patrol Volume 2, number 31, and as he was intended to be John Constantine. But Grant Morrison at the time wasn't allowed to use Constantine for whatever reason. Apparently, DC's editorial policy prevented Constantine being used outside in superhero comics because at this time, Doom Patrol was not part of Vertigo yet.
Okay.
Because there wasn't a Vertigo yet. At the time, it was still a superhero book, a main, DC Universe book. And so Grant Morrison created Kipling as a substitute, and he based the character on actor Richard E. Grant's title character from the British cult film With Nail and I. So if you're familiar with that film.
I am not, but okay.
But yeah, so but apparently it's kind of a like a scoozy git magician type, and so very like Constantine, but a little bit stranger.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of describes himself, and this is one of a good line here. I thought that where he refers to himself as like he's very big in the world of international strangeness,
mm-hmm.
to kind of put it mildly.
Yeah.
And that's a line that's actually taken directly from Morrison's story in Doom Patrol. So I thought that was really good. But so Kipling here, essentially we're introduced to him. He's attacked by another agent sect of the Cult of the Unwritten Book called the Little Sisters of Our Lady of the Razor. These rather homicidal nuns with very large straight razors, and that they can cut through walls and whatnot. And so essentially, he's the character that knows what's going on. He's read the signs. He's been following the signs. He's been waiting for them, which is why he had all those alarm clocks at the beginning to kind of tip him off that, like, hey, something's big is about to happen. And so he goes looking for the chief. Apparently they've got a history.
Yeah.
So the chief has lots of secret histories with people, as we've been introduced, that the patrol doesn't know about. So he goes to Doom Manor looking for the chief, but hey, the chief's not there, as he's told by Rita and Larry. And Rita goes, well, if you'd like to leave a message, almost like a voicemail.
Yes.
And so Kipling is just like, well, okay, that's nice. I'm going to the chief's office to get this penny. And he gets this penny and everybody else kind of like is watching him going like, what's this guy? Who's this guy?
Mm-hmm.
And Cliff obviously is like the audience's point of view character being understandably confused about what the deal is with this guy. He takes a drop of blood, puts it on the penny, and conjures this oracle named Baphomet. And Baphomet kind of lays out these little clues about the situation while also kind of resetting the classic song "A Horse with No Name," by America. Like I've been through the desert on a horse with no name.
Right.
And basically we find out that Kipling is trying to prevent the end of the world because the Cult of the Unwritten Book, who we'll talk about in our fourth segment, he's taken it upon himself to try to prevent this, and he's not going to do it sober, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you think about Kipling in this?
So I liked everything about him. I loved, first off, I'm a Mark Sheppard fan.
Right.
So,
So you were on board from the get-go.
Yeah, right from the beginning. When he is I thought it was really funny is, he's talking and sharing and not, being very vague and
Right.
acting like you should know what's going on. And then,
This is all very matter of fact to him,
yeah.
but everybody else is confused by what he's doing.
And then later, when they're talking, he's like, "Hey, is anyone going to explain any of this to me?"
Right. Yeah, that was
I don't
nice
know.
little,
I thought that was
that kind of
really
flipped things
fun.
on.
Yes,
Yeah.
I loved that part about him. A great character, a great addition to this universe. So I was really, really happy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was. I just thought that Sheppard did a really good job in this. You obviously, if you're a fan of Matt Ryan's John Constantine, essentially the same character, but Sheppard plays it a little differently, and but it's still very intriguing, and like I love the fact that like he integrates it. He starts to try to integrate himself in with the Doom Patrol, like he tries to associate with them.
Yeah.
But he's still in the background. He's got his own agenda. Like he tries to kill the unwritten book, and they with a blowtorch at first, and they like wait a minute. They try to stop him, and they're like, okay, like, well, we need to prevent the Nurnheim from getting through.
Yeah.
And so he sends Cliff and Rita. They go off to Spain and whatnot, and the rest of the team is there to try to protect the unwritten book, Elliot. Mm-hmm. So, but then Kipling comes around at that first opportunity, and like I talked about, he threw Vic to the Dry Bachelors as a distraction so that he could go back and try to kill Elliot again.
Yeah.
So even though he's being friendly, he's this like, well, he comes off as this just like Constantine. He comes off as this kind of like, well, he's kind of half drunk all the time, and he's doing weird magic, and he's kind of oddball, but he's okay, like an okay guy. But in the background, he's got his own manipulations, he's got his own ideas, and his own agenda. And I thought that was, again, like Constantine, very, very putting up a front and then having his real agenda concealed in the background.
Yeah, what I found amusing, and also kind of an ask a question,
right,
is to parody or to use another quote, where does he get all those fabulous toys?
Right.
You're like, where does he? Okay,
yeah.
Well, I'm gonna need this Janis Joplin,
dental floss,
dental floss, and all this.
Yes.
Like, where does he keep all this, and how do we get it?
Well, apparently he picks this stuff up as he goes along. Like he's got like a stick of knowing gum, which kind of gives him like an answer to a question, and apparently it's his last stick, so he doesn't have any more. We're told that. But he's got all these little magical tricks, and kind of like the Doctor on Doctor Who, where he just reaches into his pockets and pulls out whatever magical nonsense item he needs to solve a problem.
Yeah, and and you figure he has magical pockets that are bigger on the inside.
Yeah.
Where he can keep everything, and you also know.
Well, it's magic, so they're pockets of holding.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So that way he can sit there and go, and I'm sure he does collect. He collects
trinkets and stuff.
Trinkets. Perfect way to say it. Because you never know when you're going to need that. So
right, exactly. He's just like, well, I might need that at some future point. I better hold on to this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it just so happens, that he had Janis Joplin's dental floss, which apparently is like one of the few things that can sew up rips in the universe.
Yes.
So I thought that was cool.
And also a great line, Jane, I knit.
Yes.
Does he even know how to sew? And so, that was nice.
Yeah, that was a nice little twist because everybody looks at Rita, understandably, because they know she crochets and whatnot.
Yes.
But Jane, is like, I knit,
Yeah.
I thought that was rather cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was cool. So obviously we're going to learn more because this is a part one of apparently a part two story.
Yeah.
But Kipling was kind of a recurring character in Morrison's Doom Patrol.
Were you happy?
So this may not be the last time we see him after this adventure.
Was this a? Were you
Hopefully
happy to see? I mean,
I
did
was-
they
I
do
was-
a good job of taking
I
the
thought-
character from the comic into this?
I thought it was rather faithful.
Okay.
You know, Sheppard, you know, obviously brought a lot to it himself into the role,
Yeah.
but I was very satisfied with the casting. I thought it was rather good.
Good. Okay.
And I'm looking forward to seeing Mark Sheppard again, hopefully in future Doom Patrol episodes.
Absolutely.
As more weirdness happens, hopefully later on.
Yes.
All right, last topic, really quickly. And in the end, the love you make. Okay, so we had Fixing a Hole, Lovely Rita, Magical Mystery Tour, and The End. Which,
Yes.
of course, if you're a Beatles fan,
Absolutely.
you would pick up on. And the reason I chose those was because Kipling had a couple of protective spells, and he put one on Elliot saying the song "Love Me Do" by the Beatles backwards,
Mm-hmm.
and he kind of laments later on that he should have done "A Hard Day's Night" instead.
Yes.
But he couldn't remember the words to that.
Exactly.
So a couple Beatles songs were referenced, so I thought Beatles songs.
Perfect.
Yeah. So this I want to talk about the Cult of the Unwritten Book and the Decreator. And the Cult of the Unwritten Book was also first appeared in Doom Patrol number 31, just like Kipling.
Okay.
So it's like a 3-part story from Doom Patrols 31 through 33. And so these 2 episodes, I'm guessing, is basically an adaptation of that storyline.
Okay.
So if you want to check out the original source material, go read Doom Patrol 31 through 33
Okay.
of the 1987 edition of Doom Patrol. And the cult is essentially like what it says on the wrapper. It's a cult. It's an end of the world cult, a death cult.
Yeah.
That basically they're looking forward to this being that they're trying to call into this dimension called the Decreator, which is depicted as this giant eyeball in the sky, which is also right from the comic books. And this apparently the Decreator is a being that can, as it says on the label, decreate things. So basically, it wipes things from existence,
Mm-hmm.
which is not great if you're the universe and you kind of like things being in existence.
Yeah.
So you know, like things will disappear, things vanish, and that's the Decreator because that's what it's almost kind of like a virus. And once it gets inside and infects our dimension, like just like a computer virus, it kind of screws things up and things that were on your computer disappear magically.
Right.
So that's essentially what it is. So the cult is trying to bring this into being, and they've got a lot of weird agents that work for them to try to accomplish this goal. We got to meet 3 of them. We were introduced to the Dry Bachelors, which were these created from dead skin and love letters taken from romances that turned sour, or letters that were never sent. And we were introduced to the little sisters of Our Lady of the Razor, which I talked about, and the Hoodmen, which were these kind of like strange Ku Klux Klan looking guys.
Yeah.
In kind of red Klan robes that capture Cliff and Rita in Nirnheim. And they all come from the Nirnheim is revealed as this city that existed like 1,000 years ago that was destroyed. And this is like the ghost of the city. And apparently you can turn up in various objects throughout history. And as we find out in the course of the storyline, well, hey, Nirnheim just happens to be located inside a snow globe on the chief's desk in his study.
Ah, okay.
So that was the reason.
I wondered why.
So that was the reason when you pulled back from the camera,
Mm-hmm.
and he kind of exited Nirnheim outward. That's
Mhm.
when we came upon the snow globe. And if you remember, Jane was saying that when Penny Farthing first arrived in Nirnheim, that
Mhm.
this isn't real snow.
Yeah, she did say that. Right.
And the reason for that is because, hey, they're inside a snow globe. They just don't realize it.
Okay. Very cool.
So pay attention to that snow globe. It probably will be very important in the second episode.
All right. Sounds good.
But there's a bunch of other agents we haven't met yet. Maybe
Mhm.
we'll see in the second episode. There's like a group called Fear the Sky, the Mystery Kites, the Never Never Boys, the Needle Children, Pale Police, Whispering Jack, the Starving Skins, the Bellmaster. So there's a bunch of like other weird creatures that work for the cult. That
And so
maybe we'll see some of them in the second episode.
and that's why, hence the title, Cult Patrol, because I
Yes.
did not understand that. So
Yeah.
okay,
So it's not,
good.
yes.
I appreciate
So
that.
yeah. So essentially, like it's this big, massive organization, and they have little subdivisions
Okay.
that work for them, doing various things. And
Okay.
then at the top of this are the Archons of Nirnheim, which we saw that Elliot's parents become. They
Okay.
talked about how they were ascended to a different level. That was kind of their reward for taking care of the book all those years.
Okay. Good.
And so like this inscriptions that you see over Elliot, they're supposed to eventually read that as Elliot becomes older, and that it becomes the gateway that allows the D Creator to come into our universe.
Yeah,
Everybody got that?
I thought it was a nice twist that you see the Elliot growing up.
Yeah.
You see every year on his birthday, and at first, there's writing. Oh,
Yeah.
there's more writing. There's more writing.
And you notice
And
there's like
so,
little versions of the D Creator.
yeah,
Like there's a giant eyeball on the cake. There's eyeballs on
yeah,
their
yeah,
hats, their party hats or whatnot.
yes,
And then of course things take a dark turn when Martha kills her husband.
yeah, because
Todd.
he's like, run away, run away.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
maybe like that Todd was kind of
mhm,
there against his will or whatever and tried to warn his son.
yeah. So yes, as Elvis Costello said, every day they write in the book.
Yes.
So yeah, this was a nice. I always love the idea of, okay, the easiest thing to do is just, if you kill this kid, no one, end of world saved.
Right, which is
But
which is how Kipling's approaching
yeah,
it.
but it because it's never that simple, right?
Right.
You know, so yeah, I mean, Josh Whedon's Cabin in the Woods kind of
Yeah.
had that, a similar premise.
Right.
Not totally, but the idea of, like, if you sacrifice just a few to save all, is that okay?
Right.
So yeah, I really liked that part of the episode, and I was happy they covered it. I'm really curious to see.
Yeah, I know that's a lot to handle. I know this, like I said, this is the advanced level of Grant
Yeah.
Morrison's Doom Patrol. And I'm glad we waited until episode 4 to get to this, because if they had hit everybody with this right off the bat,
Hmm.
it would have been way more intimidating, and I think a lot more people would have been turned off.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is kind of what I wanted to see from Doom Patrol. I wanted to see it getting weird, like the comic book, and this was the first real case of that.
Yeah.
And I was glad to see that, and I was glad that it was a pretty faithful adaptation of this storyline so far.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was a really good story. I'm excited to see the second half.
Yep.
It does feel, you know, I was very critical of the Titans, not always,
Being faithful.
or not, just too many road stops. Like, okay,
Okay.
come on, this wasn't, but I felt like this was the perfect time to kind of throw in this adventure of the team. So
Yes.
yeah, I agree. I think it's a really well done.
Well, and obviously we're getting to see them interact more as a team.
Yes,
too.
exactly.
So it's kind of bringing them together, and even starting to bring in Rita.
Yeah,
A little bit. So we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else about this episode?
Nope. Just loved it and was really happy to see. Yep.
Yep. We obviously have a cliffhanger. The D-Creator is looming in the sky.
Yeah, there you go.
And,
Absolutely.
And we'll see what happens next.
I will probably go watch the episode again now that you've given me some insight.
Hopefully I've given you a little bit of that.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing it again.
Yeah, and maybe it would help if you did want to check out the comic book series, the storyline, 31 through 33. Just a little tip. Highly recommended, but I thought this was a more mainstream adaptation to make it more accessible.
Good, very good.
All right. Do you have any favorite lines of the episode?
So I just have one.
Okay.
But I did love this one. You know, Hammerhead has a problem with the Catholic Church.
Yes.
And so there.
We didn't talk about that. Hammerhead kind of flips out inside the church.
Yeah. And so she goes, "How many lives were wrecked here? You think in the shadows?" And Cliff, little too busy in my own slasher flick here to get into all this now.
Yeah.
I really like that point. I love that.
Yeah, I thought that was really good too. And that's kind of like a little bit of a difference from the comic book as well with Jane, is that, it seems to have this religious connotation to it, that maybe there was some religious abuse by a church leader or something. Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And obviously Jane has a problem with it, or at least parts of her, especially like Hammerhead, have a problem with it. My favorite lines between Rita and Kipling, where Kipling, this is when he first shows up, and Rita goes, "We don't know where he is, or for that matter, when he'll be back. But if you'd like to leave a message, maybe tell us who you are." And Kipling interjects, "A message. Sure. How's this? Dear Calder, you wanker, I need my penny you nicked, 'cause the world's about to effing end again. Signed, your old pal Kip." Rita says, "That's your name, Kip?" Kipling replies, "Name's Kipling, Willoughby Kipling. Knights Templar, in case you're wondering. Don't suppose that means anything to either of you. I'm very big in the world of, shall we say, international strangeness. So go ahead, check me out. In the meantime, I'll be in that bag of goat shit's office saving the world." I thought it was rather good. Good exchange between Cliff and Larry, where this is just after they'd seen the Oracle Baphomet. And Cliff goes, "You believe a blue horse head?" And Larry kind of pauses for a moment. He goes, "I do." And Cliff replies, and this kind of sums up a lot of things about this kind of story, "I just don't understand anything anymore."
Yeah, I really liked the horse head. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, Baphomet. That was good. Last exchange was between Cliff and Mother Archon at the end of the episode, which I liked. Cliff goes, "So this is it? We just stare at each other until the world ends?" And Mother Archon replies, "It won't be long until the book is read. I can feel it." And Cliff replies, "The book? You mean your son?" And Mother Archon replies to that, "To me, he is the unwritten book." And Cliff goes, "Wow, I gotta hand it to you, lady. I've been a pretty dad, checked out for a while now, but you take the whole damn cake. Raising your only kid so you can sacrifice him to a death cult after killing his dad in front of him, that there is top shelf BS." So I thought that was really good. That's all I have. So do you have a rating for this episode?
Yes, I give this, it was a good episode, so I would give it 8 punk rock t-shirts.
Okay, for Cliff's, because Cliff has a whole wardrobe, and unfortunately, I'm waiting for DC Universe to start selling these things.
Yeah, I don't know if they're legitimate or
they're not going to get. They're not getting the. I mean, there's some that are band T-shirts that they probably wouldn't be able to sell.
Yeah.
But there are some where like Cliff's has the Hello World T-shirt that I'm sure they could sell on DC Universe, and I really wish they would get around to merchandising these shows, like Titans too. But we'll really want some Doom Patrol merchandise now.
Absolutely.
I like this one slightly better, probably because I was really glad to see Doom Patrol finally embracing the Grant Morrison weirdness, which it did in a huge way this week. So 9 out of 10 D-Creator birthday cakes.
Nice. I like that.
You better come back here and eat this effing cake.
Yes, that was very funny.
Yeah,
that was another great line.
Yeah, that was good. So giant cakes with eyeballs, and now I want D-Creator cake. All right, so just a little bit of Titans Tower news this time, where apparently in an upcoming Doom Patrol episode, we have an actor that you may be familiar with, Jesse, because Ed Asner is going to be appearing in a Doom Patrol episode.
Oh, nice.
He's going to be playing, and this is obviously Ed Asner, who very famous for
Mr. Grant.
Yeah, playing Lou Grant on the old Mary Tyler Moore show back in the 70s.
Yeah.
But he's done a lot of voice work. He played Granny Goodness in the Superman the Animated Series, did the voice of that character. And he's really good at his Granny Goodness, which I thought was good. But he's been in a lot of other things. And he's going to be playing a character named Ed Garvey, who is described as a hospital patient who befriends Rita, a.k.a. Elastigirl, and helps her to confront the secrets of her past.
Okay.
So I'll be curious to see where that goes at some point. So there's that. And we do have some feedback this week. Just one response.
Okay.
Because apparently DJ Nick is slacking again. Shame on you, DJ Nick. But thankfully, Holly from Wisconsin has written
Thank you, Holly. Go ahead.
Do you want to read Holly's? Or?
No, I got it. You go ahead.
All right, we'll do this really quickly. All right, so Holly says, "Hey guys, what an episode! Mark Sheppard did an awesome job as Willoughby Kipling, didn't he? Though I totally agree. Great scenes between Rita and Elliot. Love the nod to America and the horse with no name with the ghost horse. That's she's referring to Baphomet.
Yes.
The D-Creator is quite the villain. I have the feeling we haven't seen the last of it. Nope, there's going to be a second episode, presumably. The scenes with Cliff and Jane were interesting, and I can see where Cliff sees Jane as his daughter, Clara. Also, Vic is making strides to becoming part of the team. All in all, good episode. Can't wait for next week." Holly from Wisconsin. So thank you, Holly.
Very nice, Holly. Yes.
We always love hearing from you here and also on Next Stop Everywhere. So it's great to hear from you here.
Absolutely. I did love the horse oracle. Kind of reminded me of Bad Horse from the Josh Whedon.
Right.
Yeah, so good stuff.
And that was another thing that was taken from the original's comic book story, so that was cool. They kept that.
Very nice.
All right. So
I will have to go check that out.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. And maybe like Willoughby Kipling, I wouldn't approach it sober. Just saying. All right.
Issues 31
through 33.
31 and 33.
And that's the 1987 version.
Yes.
Not the original. Mm-hmm. This would be the second Doom Patrol series.
Okay.
So with Grant Morrison. So if you want to be like Holly, we definitely appreciate hearing from all of you out there in podcast land. So you can reach us at TitanTalkCast@gmail.com. That's TitanTalkCast@gmail.com. Or you can reach us on Facebook at Titan Talk, the Titans Podcast, or on the Twitter machine at Titan Talkcast. We'd love to have you like and follow us there. And if you would, also go to iTunes to rate and review us, because that helps people find us. And we definitely would appreciate more listeners, because we obviously would love to grow the podcast and would like to hear more from people out there. So if you have friends that you think might be interested in Titan Talk, or if they're Doom Patrol fans, please let them know about us, because we definitely appreciate that.
Very nice. So if you want to reach out to me, you can get me on at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. Charles and I are always talking about Doctor Who on Next Stop Everywhere, and he has had some wonderful special guest hosts that you should check out. Charles, how can they reach you?
Of course, you can reach me on the Twitter machine at Charles Skaggs, or at Charles Skaggs on the Instagram. We definitely appreciate that. Facebook, of course, at Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, or my blog at Geeky Things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Titan Talk, including Titans, including Doom Patrol, news of other DC Universe shows coming up like Stargirl or Swamp Thing, Harley Quinn animated series, news of my other podcasts I do for Southgate Media, including the aforementioned Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, or Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse, where we talk about all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, etc., etc. So if you're a Grant Morrison fan and you're into that weird thing and you're also into David Lynch or Twin Peaks, Ghostwood would be right up your alley. Just saying.
Absolutely.
All right. Everybody, come on back next week as Jesse and I are going to discuss Paw Patrol, as in PAW, Paw Patrol, which is episode 5. Now, I don't have a description of what's going to be in the episode, but presumably it's part 2 of this story that we just featured in Cult Patrol. We find out how the Doom Patrol stops that wacky D-Crater giant eyeball in the sky.
All right.
And the Cult of the Unwritten Book. So stay tuned. Come on back. We'll be talking about that next time. Jesse, anything before we say goodbye?
Just thank you, Charles. Thank you, listeners. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Take care, everybody. See you next week. Bye.